Welcome to the Bold Life Movement podcast. I'm your host, Kimberly Rich, and each week I bring you inspiring stories from real people to help you live a more passionate and intentional life. You'll learn how to up-level in everything from relationships, entrepreneurship and leadership, to spirituality, sexuality, and yes, even money. If you're interested in raising your game to be a better business owner, a better lover, and a happier, more fulfilled human, then you're in the right place. No more living on autopilot. You are just an episode away from a bolder, better, more fulfilling life. Welcome back to the Bold Life Movement. I'm your host, Kimberly Rich, aka Kimbo Slice, and this week I'm excited to welcome Amazon bestselling author Mary Shores. Mary, well, thank you so much for coming on. First, I do want to give you a big congratulations because I know that this week your book just hit Amazon bestseller, which is so awesome.
Yeah, can you believe that? That was so unexpected to happen, and it started happening really fast as it started lowering down the ranking and made it to number 1 Friday. I was so excited. Thank you so
amazing.
much.
Yeah, you're so welcome. I mean, when we first met, I guess it was like a year, maybe a year and a half ago now, and the book was still in the editing process and you were starting to promote it. And I mean, you know, with traditional publishing, these things take time. So to see it have come to fruition and now hit bestseller status is just like, I'm so excited for you.
Yeah, it's definitely been a dream come true. And when we met, I think I was still writing sort of the last section of the book and editing things as I was going along and getting a little, tired of that part of the process too.
I can totally empathize.
Yeah.
So just to reiterate, the book is called Conscious Communications, your step-by-step guide to harnessing the power of your words to change your mind, your choices, and your life. Can you tell me how your book differs from other self-help books in the same space?
Yes. So what I love about this book and what was my intention from the beginning was to write a book that talks about how we create our own reality or how we're creating our own life, but to totally use a foundation of science. So having it be very neurological based, like understanding why these things that we say in spirituality are true. So it's truly a book that is at this perfect intersection of where science and spirituality meet. So it's like taking these spiritual principles that we learn about, like meditation, and then breaking it apart through the science and understanding why it works. And then also teaching you that there are so many ways to like get your groove on and create the reality you want, because we're always creating all the time. But I think that sometimes we can get stuck in periods of our lives where we're creating a lot of chaos versus creating a lot of the things that we want.
I love that. And so to drill down a little bit into that, what is the science behind how our words specifically can affect the experience that we're having?
Sure. So words in particular, which words are just one of the ways that we talk about in the book, but I chose words to focus on because part of this is an alignment thing. And I hear lots and lots of people talking about alignment. And I have to be really honest with you, Kimberly. When I used to hear stuff like that, I would be like, what the F are they talking about? Or like my favorite one was just allow. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
That doesn't even make any sense. I could not deal with all of these like terminologies that kept making me feel like I was going to fail. Right. So, okay. So alignment, I finally figured it out, is when you get your thoughts, your words, and your choices all in the same direction of what you want. And that's what makes you truly powerful. So a great example of that is to say, like my own story. So for 10 years, I was walking around and I was saying, I want to write a book, but I'm not a writer. And so words, and this is partly why they're so important. Words are like a mirror to your subconscious programming. And they're also just a mirror to what's written on your soul. So those words, I want to write a book, it's like you're seeing what's written on my soul. But the words, I'm not a writer, are not in alignment with that. Yeah. So what was happening was every time I was saying, I want to write a book, but I'm not a writer, I was carving a little subconscious pathway in my mind that supported the belief that I'm not a writer. And so it was very important because words slowly over time carve out neural pathways in your subconscious mind, because we say these things over and over and over again. And so the reason words are so important is because they're one of the easiest places where you can begin to control the output. Because I tried controlling my thoughts and I was thinking a lot of crazy stuff.
Yeah. I'm sure a lot of people listening can relate.
I don't know where these thoughts are coming from, but I'm glad that there's another way. So when you change your words, what happens is when you change your words, your behavior will begin to change. And it's like a feedback loop. And then your thoughts begin to change. But if somebody just tells you, change your thoughts, well, that's not that easy.
Yeah.
And some people can do that in like short periods of time, but I really needed something that I could set down and have as a daily practice. And that's what worked for me.
Yeah. So I really like the way that you connected those three things, the words, the actions, and the thoughts. And I'm highlighting that for a very specific reason. I think a lot of people think, oh, by changing my words, that's going to help me change my thoughts and my beliefs, and then I'll start to act differently. But what I found and what you sort of just hinted at is that that's not necessarily the progression. If we use, and I'm going to segue here into affirmations. If we're using affirmations, just saying things, I'm a writer. I like to write. I love the way it feels after I've churned out 1,000 messy words, then that might mean I'm going to sit down and just write 1,000 messy words that day. Well, if you do that consistently for a week, you start to think differently about the writing process, and then you start to believe different things about whether or not you're a writer. So I want to dial into affirmations just a little bit more specifically, but in the book you said there are different kinds. Can you speak to that a little bit? Like, what are the different types and how can people use them differently?
Yeah, so I've got a couple of different things. So in the introduction of the book, I've got this thing, I think it's called the 5 different types of self-expression. So we've got self-talk, spoken word, gratitude, affirmations, and goal setting. And so each of these are a form of communicating. It's like Louise Hay used to always say, it's like your words go out into the universe, and the universe feeds things and situations back to you according to your words.
Yeah.
But I think that partly, and this is the science part, is to understand that for many, many, many reasons. Like I could go, even at my Kundalini yoga class, we talk about all the meridian points that are in your mouth. Like when your tongue touches different places inside your mouth, that it actually affects the meridians in your body, which, okay, that's like mind-blowingly interesting, but it's not scientific.
Like, go on.
I know, it's like so cool. But you know what? That's what I mean by the science and the spirituality they're really talking about the same thing, but they're using 2 different languages.
Yeah.
And so by even stimulating the way that you stimulate when you say spoken words, that's a different way that it's going to carve out a neural network than when you just think a thought. So words are powerful. So we've got spoken words like we've talked about, and you can catch yourself because, you've got these involuntary speech patterns that sometimes you're not always aware that you've said that. And that's how it was with me. Like I had no idea how long I was, or how many times I was going around saying that I wasn't a writer.
Yeah.
So once I was aware of it, it was really easy to adjust it. Okay. But then you've got also your like self-talk. So self-talk is also super important in just that I'll say it like this. Let's say that you and I are best friends and we are meeting on Sunday to have coffee. Like every Sunday we just meet and have coffee. And you say to me, or I say to you, oh my God, Kim, like I did this horrible thing this week. I'm in so much trouble with my boss. I don't understand how I could have been so freaking stupid. And I'm just going on and on and on about how horrible I am. Your reaction to me is probably going to be like this. like, you know what, Mary, I've known you a long time, and I know that you're being hard on yourself right now in this situation. Like, let's really look at it and see what's going on, and figure out what we can do about it. Like, you're going to take a loving and compassionate approach to me. But when I have that same conversation with myself, I am not taking a loving,
Right.
compassionate approach. I'm taking a very critical approach. But if you came to me with those same problems, I would give you that loving compassion. And so that's like what I'm talking about with the power of self-talk. And I do have some things in the book that can really help you reframe and actually create compassion, self-compassion. But what's interesting is that I explain it through ways of how you create the chemicals that are associated with self-compassion, which is a lot of like vasopressin. So how do you create vasopressin in your system in order to feel love for yourself? So, I think we all know about like the big three, like oxytocin, serotonin, and dopamine, but there's all these other chemicals, and it's so interesting. So self-talk definitely like stimulates the way we feel about ourselves by affecting the chemicals we're creating in our body. And yeah, the other ones, gratitude is one of my favorites, because gratitude, now, when I think every spiritual practice, every religion out there has, they definitely promote gratitude.
Yep.
And when I thought of gratitude, like I said, because this is really based on neuroscience, it's like, how does gratitude support us according to the way that our brains are wired? And the way that it works is that when you set up a daily practice for gratitude, you're training yourself to always be looking for things that are positive and good in your environment. And after a little while, like it took me about 45 days. That's kind of my thing that I notice is with affirmations, it took 45 days. But after a while, you've looked back and you have created new neural pathways.
Yeah.
And you've let the old ones sort of crumble away like an unmaintained bridge.
Yeah, I love that. One of the earlier examples that I was exposed to in terms of focus, like gratitude helps you focus on the positive things in your life. I think it was at a Tony Robbins event, actually. He had the entire audience close their eyes for a second and then open them and look for everything in the room that was red. And then he had them close their eyes for a second again and then open them and say, okay, point out all the things that are brown, or rename all the things you saw that were brown. Well, people couldn't really remember the things that were brown because they hadn't been looking for them, even though they were there. They were still there. So by focusing on the things that you want to see more of, the positive things, the things that you're grateful for, you're going to actually experience more of them, even though all of the same factors are probably still present. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And, that's the first coaching exercise in the book, is to create a gratitude practice. And it supports the idea of cultivating a positive focus. So you've got this exactly right. And because what you focus on, you create. So but it's like, again, when you tell someone, well, just don't focus on that, it doesn't work. Like, oh, just don't be angry about that. Or, it's just when you tell someone directly, just doesn't work. So you've got to create these other ways of getting the job done.
Yeah. And so what is one thing that you advise people to do in this exercise in creating a positive focus?
So the gratitude exercise is the big one. And we have a couple ways of doing that. So first, I am big on accountability. So if I don't have an accountability partner, it's going to last about 10 days.
Yeah.
I'm going to be excited about it for like 10 days.
That even sounds like a long time. I'm like, proud.
I know. It's a big commitment, 10 days.
Yeah.
So I created are you ready for this? I created my gratitude group on January 27th, 2015. And that group has 3 other women in it. And we're from all over the world. And we have been sharing 3 gratitudes every day since January 27th, 2015.
Every day.
Every day. I mean,
wow.
There's times like we might miss a day. There's one person that's in the Amazon right now for 12 days.
She has an excuse.
She's off the grid.
Yeah.
But she'll come back and it's amazing because we've all met each other now, like in this almost 3 years. We've met each other because we go to Tony Robbins events, or, we do Skype calls maybe twice a year. But it's just as simple as I know I'm going to send that text message. I know I'm going to read their text messages. We don't have to even like support each other through it. It sort of naturally happens.
Right.
But when I formed this group, I actually went on a Facebook group that I was in and I said, hey, who wants to, share gratitudes? And I had over 40 women respond. Well, I was thrilled. Wow. But the thing was, I did not want to share. I did not want to read 40 text messages a day. I really just wanted 3 other women. Yeah. So I created a gratitude group. It's called Declaring Gratitude. So it's a women's only group. But if you want to join, or any of the listeners want to join, we're happy to have you. And there's 2 things you can do in the group. Number 1, you can just answer the daily gratitude prompts. So we have daily gratitude prompts. You can just answer those. Or on Fridays, we have Friend Friday, and you can like hook up with an accountability partner. So
awesome.
I don't know. I believe in it, and it's changed my life. Like, I got my book deal with Hay House within 7 months of starting that practice.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I feel like it's one of the most common pieces of advice that we hear in this space, but also it's the easiest to overlook. Mm-hmm. It's one of those super simple practices that make such a difference. But just like meditation, it's the first thing that we skip when we're feeling like too busy and overwhelmed. So I honor you for 2.5 years of consistency. That's impressive.
That's where the accountability partners come into play. Yeah. I can honestly say that I had tried it before. So like 2 years prior to that, I had tried it with, instead of going to that group, and because when you go to a group, you have like-minded individuals. Mm-hmm. But I tried it first just with some girlfriends, and it didn't work. And the reason it didn't work is because they were never sending their gratitudes. Like, I kept sending mine, but they weren't necessarily sending theirs back. And so instead of being grateful, I was frustrated.
Yeah.
So accountability was key.
Yeah, no, I think that that's really helpful. I mean, I've noticed recently in myself, I was out of practice with exercise, and it's because I didn't have an accountability partner. And the person that I had been doing accountability with happens to be visiting Austin right now. So just seeing him face to face and hearing what he's been doing for fitness each day kind of got me like drinking the Kool-Aid again. So for the past 2 days, every morning, even without him, I've gone and run or gone to yoga and just texted him to let him know I did it. Because it's like without that acknowledgement or recognition, I'm not motivated, if I'm honest with myself. So whatever works for you.
The power of accountability. It works.
Totally. So switching gears just a little bit, I want to get a better understanding of unconscious versus conscious communication. Can you kind of define those 2 for us and explain why it is the second, the latter that we should be opting for?
So the first thing that comes to mind is that we think, so this is through the research that I've done, we have anywhere from 60 to 90,000 thoughts a day, and a really high percentage of them, like 90 to 95%, are identical to the thoughts you had the day before. Mm-hmm. So, the easiest example is that autopilot thing. Like if you've driven to your office and you kind of like, it's a 10-minute commute, and you get there and you think, I don't even remember that drive. Yeah. So that's an example of being unconscious and also just reacting all the time. Like this happens, I have a reaction, this, stimulus in, reaction out, over and over again. That's very unconscious, like driving on, living out of the lower parts of your brain. Yeah. Like, say lower, I don't mean subconscious, but I mean like the amygdala and those kind of things. So when you become conscious about it and you're really deliberately deciding how you're going to show up in the world, then you're paying attention to in a different way. And the reason that that's such a benefit is because when you start to do the practices in the book, you're going to notice how many opportunities are around you. And that is what's truly going to change your life.
Awesome. I love it. I mean, one of the 3, I have 3 words that I think of and I kind of meditate on every day, 3 things I want to be. And one of them is intentional. And I think that might be the hardest one for me because it's super easy, like you said, to just go into that autopilot, go about your day sort of way of being. And it's through flipping the script and thinking new thoughts and doing new actions that we actually start to move towards our goals. So I think that's super helpful.
So true.
Yeah.
I love that word, by the way. Do you want to tell me your other two?
Sure. So the other two are inspiring and radiant.
Oh, I love that. Thank you for sharing those with me.
You're so welcome. I have an alarm. I think I mentioned this on an episode before, but I have an alarm on my phone that goes off every day at 10:15. And it's sort of like I've had enough time to go about my morning routine. I'm diving into work, and it can be easy to get sucked into being reactive. And those are like a really good reset for me, to evaluate how am I showing up, get recalibrated, and make sure I'm kicking off the day in the way that I want to be.
I love it.
Thank you.
That's amazing.
So I think that one of the biggest things that people struggle with when it comes to being intentional and choosing their words and their actions is not actually knowing the outcome. In the book, you talk about always knowing your outcome. So what about the people who are sure they don't want what they have, whether that's a relationship, a job, just a state of being, but they're not sure what it is that they do want? What would you tell them?
I love that. I have a course out. It's called Dream with a Deadline. And one of the exercises is because I have that happen all the time where if I'm teaching a workshop and I'll ask people, what do you want? And it seems like they start regurgitating out to me all the things in their life that are happening, like, well, I don't want to argue with my kids and I don't want to have financial problems and I don't want to be in debt.
Yeah.
So so that's an easy one because it's just as simple as naming the opposite. And, just by saying the opposite, well, if you don't want to have debt, then you want financial freedom. What is the opposite of that? But, it's not always as obvious. And a story that I tell in the book it's a very personal story. And it's kind of funny and it gives you a little bit insight into my own psychology. So I was going to get a massage. And it was with my person that I do massage and Reiki with. And we just kind of do this combo thing all the time. And we've been doing it for years. And so the section in the book is called Laying It Out on the Massage Table. So I had planned exactly what I was going to think about during the massage because I had just listened to this Neville Goddard talk called Self-Talk Creates Reality. And so I was really fascinated with it. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to think happy and good thoughts about my ex-husband. That was my plan. It failed. It really failed. And because at the time I was having a lot of just, issues, like the typical divorce issues, child support, him taking responsibility. It doesn't even matter, but those things were there.
Yeah.
And so the more I just tried to focus on, I have a peaceful relationship with my ex-husband and we are co-parenting our children in a way that's mutually beneficial for everyone. I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
I couldn't do it. So I started crying. And then Jessica's like, what's wrong? And she's also a therapist. So she loves to do talk therapy while you're getting a massage because so many of your emotions are actually trapped into your body. And so it's just brilliant to actually have a massage therapist that you can talk to. And so I was telling her what I was trying to do. And she probably thought that was weird. But then she goes, well, good thing that you're an entrepreneur and you can handle things, on your own. And I just started crying more. And I thought, you know what? That's true, but I'm tired of being that. I'm exhausted from having to carry the weight of the world on my shoulders.
Yeah.
And so we talked about it more and we talked about it more. And she goes, you know what? It sounds like what you really want is unconditional love and support. And as soon as I heard that, the tears went away. And I was like, that's it. That's it.
That's the outcome.
Yes. So what I really needed to be focused on was that unconditional love and support. And just by becoming aware of that, by the next morning, I woke up realizing how much unconditional love and support that I had all around me, just not from the source that maybe I expected it from.
Yeah. But knowing what to start looking for helped you realize how much of it you already had.
So what I wanted, or what I was thinking that I didn't want, was like this adversarial relationship with my ex-husband over our children.
Yeah.
And so what made sense to me was to say, I want this peaceful relationship. But when I peel back the layers, what I really wanted was love and support. Like I just wanted to feel supported with our kids. And yeah, it was, how Mariane Williamson says, a miracle is but a shift in perception. I experienced a miracle that day because no longer did I have this attachment with him. And then all of those negative thoughts just on their own dissipated.
I love that. So for people who are listening that don't have a magical Reiki massage goddess in their life, what are some ways that they can start to seek out that clarity if it's not just flipping the script? Like you thought, oh, the opposite of contention with my husband is like a peaceful relationship with him. What are some other ways that they can search for that clarity?
I still think that stating the opposite is like the level one or the step one in doing it, because for the most part, you're going to get very close. And I have tons of exercises in the book that just walk you through like a step-by-step process.
Awesome.
So another one is that, and this is loosely related to it, but choosing an alter ego or choosing an archetype to live through. And so my example of this is that when I was going through this for the book, I decided that my alter ego was a cross between Jessica Rabbit and Scarlett O'Hara.
Get it?
And so you get it, right? So, well, what's interesting about that is that, again, and this reveals a little bit about focus, because what I loved about Jessica is that I'm tall, Jessica's tall, and Jessica could have any man she wanted, but she wanted Roger Rabbit because Roger Rabbit was a force for good. So right away, I know that my focus is always wanting to focus on how can I help other people, like you said, inspiring other people and motivating people. And then we've got this Scarlett O'Hara. And Scarlett, what I really love about her is that she's business brilliant. Scarlett O'Hara, she knew how to get shit done. But just like Scarlett, I also was creating a lot of chaos in my life. Scarlett, she had a lot of issues. She had a lot of personal problems. Like say, like today we would call her drama. And I realized, through that process, that I really wanted to be Dorothy, because Dorothy had the power all along. So what is all the point of that? Okay, it sounds silly, right? But the truth is that when you choose someone, they are a mirror to a skill set or something that is true about yourself. So whoever you choose, there is a reason for that. And there is something about them that you either identify that you want, or that there's a quality that they have that is mirrored in you. So it's just another little like fun exercise to get clear on who you are and what you want.
Yeah.
And we have like a lot of prompts. So there's also some writing prompts in there for you to uncover these things as well. I don't remember what they are off the top of my head, but there are several.
Awesome. Cool. Well, we'll definitely have the book and your website and all of the ways that people can find you linked up in the show notes. So I feel like the compounding effect of daily decision making is something that people often overlook. So I really, really liked your cleanse or clog method that you talked about. Can you speak to what that is and give people a little bit more insight?
I love talking about that. So what we have is, going back to the beginning of the show, we talked a little bit about alignment. And the definition that I like to give about alignment is when you have your words, your thoughts, your actions, your choices, all going in the direction of what you want. And so what I think is, okay, that sounds easy, but is it easy? And it's not. And again, because our lives are more complicated than that. And so I always like to keep things very, very simple. And what I realized was that everything in life is based on the choices you make. So I talk about this movie that I love called A Bronx Tale. And I love the movie because there's a quote in the movie and it says, "The choices you make will shape your life forever." And it's so true. So that's kind of like the central part of that chapter. But then to go into it to say, how can we make choices that are going to connect us to what we want instead of constantly making choices that we then later on beat ourselves up for? And so the easiest way for me to explain it is like if I'm on a diet, and this comes like right from Tony Robbins, but if I'm on a diet and I want to lose 20 pounds, then I don't really have to go and learn all of these complicated diet strategies like keto or paleo or whatever with points, because I don't have time for that. But I can just look at a piece of food and I can instinctively ask myself, will this cleanse me or clog me? And so if I'm looking at an apple, then I know that that's cleansing.
Yeah.
And then I was teaching this in a workshop, like this was years ago, but all of a sudden I started saying, everything you say and do in a relationship is either cleansing you or clogging you, meaning that every word that comes out of your mouth, every action you take, everything you do with a partner, it's either cleansing that relationship or clogging it. Because what I'm really saying is everything is either creating deeper connection or it's driving a disconnection. So cleanse or clog really means connect or disconnect. So this is true with our careers, with our finances, with our spiritual and personal growth. And what I have found and what a lot of readers are saying to me is that they are having drastic shifts in their life just by applying cleanse or clog. And there's a lot of information to support you. Like this is not about being perfect. There's an 80-20 rule that typically if you are 80% of your time making cleansing connected choices, 20% of the time you've got have your chocolate lava cake and your glass of red wine. You'll be okay because it's not about creating perfectionism.
Right.
So yeah, I love cleanse or clog.
Yeah, I do too. And I think my favorite thing about it is that it's the simplicity of a little tool like that people can take and actually implement in their life. And it's the compounding effect of using the cleanse or clog for every little decision that you make that's going to drastically change your life. But in the moment, it's as simple as, is this going to cleanse me or clog me? Whether I eat it, say it, do it, whatever. So I think it's really useful.
It helps you make choices, sometimes you're trying to decide between one thing or another, or maybe this choice is something that's good for me right now, but there's something about it that doesn't feel right. And you think, okay, does this get me closer to what my end result goals are?
Yeah.
Or farther away? And sometimes even people take jobs because that job is like a means to an end right now, but it doesn't necessarily get them closer to their end result goals. So there's all kinds of ways that you can use this really simple tool.
Yeah, I love it. So I have just a couple more questions that I ask at the end of every episode. But before we get to those, I did want to take a minute and just acknowledge you. We've spoken offline. We've had some time to connect since meeting at Tony Robbins last year. And so I know that, like me, you love to go to different conferences, different workshops, and you've done your fair share of research for this book. So I wanted to acknowledge you for actually taking so much of what you've learned over the years and using it in your life and changing your life with those tools. And then now translating them and teaching them to other people who need to hear them in only a way that you can share them. So
thank you. That's really, really sweet. Yes, I am definitely a workshop junkie. It's my joy in life to go to workshops.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, we go to school for the first 20 something, 18 to 22 years of our life. And then so many people stop learning. I think this is such an enriching way to keep learning. So I'm all for it. Last couple questions. I ask these, like I said, at the end of every episode. I want to know what your definition of being bold is.
Oh, wow. Well, I always take steps in the direction of what I want. And when I was younger, I used to not understand what people meant when they would say, think outside of the box. And then eventually, maybe when I was about 30, I realized that was because my entire life was out of the box. Like here, I had opened a, debt collection company when I was 24 years old. And I just, it was a very male dominated field. I was the youngest person in the country to open a collection agency. But I think what I realized was that I always took steps forward without taking into account what the consequence could be. So just really boldly moving forward all the time.
Yeah, I love
That's a
that.
great question.
Thank you. And lastly, what is your why?
Oh my gosh. Well, my why is it's a big one. Kind of like you with your three intentional words,
Hmm.
but I wrote a list of 8 things that I want to manifest in my life, and I call it my magic 8.
I love
And
that.
so my why is to support the things in life that are my magic 8. But even bigger than that is I want to make a dent in the collective consciousness
Mm.
of the world. And I want to do that from the perspective of like how I'm helping people grow through personal development, but also in my career as a debt collector, it's like, how do we reframe the way that we look at debt? Because having a debt is a burden, and it's a psychological burden that keeps people down, and it keeps them feeling unworthy and shame.
Mm.
And so I'm on this one woman mission to change all of that.
I love that. And when we first chatted about that a couple weeks ago, we had an offline conversation. I was fascinated by hearing those words from a debt collector. I think so many people would have a very different vision in their mind of a debt collector.
Oh, sure.
And so I think I just found that as someone who's had debt in her life, I found that very meaningful, and I am happy to support you in any way that I can on that journey.
Well, I'll probably take you up on that someday, but I'm definitely all about it. Like we've got a debt problem in this country, and the problem is the way we look at it.
Mm.
So I would love to make that dent in that consciousness.
Awesome. So what is the best place for everyone to go get more information about you and about the book?
Well, the first thing is, we talked a lot about exercises today. And so we're offering to everyone. I have a free guidebook that's called the Conscious Communications. It's just a companion book, and it has all of the exercises that we talked about today and many more. And you can actually get that guidebook for free on my website, which is maryshores.com. Or we probably gave you a link. So if you put that in your show notes, that's great. The book's available on Amazon. It's available at Barnes and Noble, and of course, hayhouse.com. You can find me through my Facebook group, Declaring Gratitude, or just my Facebook page, Mary Shores.
Awesome. Well, Mary, thank you so much. I'm super excited. I've loved every bit of the book that I've read so far, and I can't wait to share it with my listeners.
Thank you so much, Kimberly. It was so fun being with you today.
Thank you so much to Mary for coming on today's show. To get access to all those show notes and to grab a copy of Mary's book and free companion guide, visit theboldlifemovement.com/064. If you're thinking that you might want to dip your toe into this world of affirmations, but you have no idea where to start, then go and head over to the show notes, because there you can drop your email address and get access to my personal affirmations. This is not something that I've ever offered publicly before, and I'm sure to have a vulnerability hangover from it. But if you want them, they're yours. So just visit theboldlifemovement.com/064 to get access now.